Good afternoon, everybody. It is July 1st. We're on the second half of this year. What do you know? Hope everyone's doing all right today. I'm going to start off with something a little light. I had heard a portion of this speech, and so I wanted to check out the rest of it. There's some good things in there from Tucker Carlson, and so I apologize to those who may have, if you have seen it, but that's what we're going to go over this for this first half hour. And then we have more developments on some of these other stories about wanting to charge Trump with more stuff, and Bedminster, and all this kind of stuff. So it really comes down to, did he have the ability to have what he had? And I think that we've already established that yes, he did. So they can try to, I think they're just really trying to scare people. I think they understand that none of this stuff is actually going to go to trial before the election, before we vote next in 2024, and that all this stuff will still be in the air, and that I think that that's where this is going. I think they really are going to go with this whole 200 counts plus all those different people. It's going to be crazy. Going to be crazy, and they're going to look like they're being totalitarian dictators while they're doing it, which is not too far off from what it really is. So we'll be here to pull up our lawn chairs and have a look at the at the end of the political world, so to speak. So here we go. Thank you to One Hot Tamale over there in the foxhole with the cookie and the message fresh right out of the oven. I appreciate that. Thanks One Hot Tamale. Thanks also to Sean Joe with the cookie, and Just Jim with the can over there on the foxhole. Then we also have, I think JP has a new skit later. We have another thing from Doc Rich talking about how, and it'll be fun because he goes over a news media clip. So it'd be like as if I was doing it. So I'll pass the torch off over there for a few minutes to see what he's got to say. And then they're still on about this campaign financer, not financer. She runs the finances. So Sarah, or have it right here. Senior campaign advisor, Susie Wiles. So they're plastering her face everywhere, trying to insinuate that there's some criminality there, which there's not. And so anyway, it's just a pressure campaign. But I don't think you're going to have many people fold. So anyway, here we go.
So I wanted to come for that reason, just being totally blunt with you. And the second reason is to pay homage and to give some measure of thanks to Ed Fulner for giving me my first job, which changed my life. And to say I was not a promising hire would be an understatement. It's not false modesty. In fact, if anything, I'm underplaying it. But I was leaving college without a degree or a job and attempting to marry my girlfriend, which I subsequently did, and ran into this giant roadblock in the form of her Episcopal priest father who said, no, job first. And not only did I not have a job, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I applied to a couple of different places, the CIA, if you can even imagine, some boarding school in Rabat, because I thought, Morocco, lower standards, maybe they'll hire me. No. And I wound up at Heritage, as you heard, as a fact checker, copy editor at Policy Review, the quarterly magazine of the Heritage Foundation. And that job absolutely changed my life. I was paid $14,000 a year plus a $100 bill for Christmas, which Dr. Fulner gave out personally to the entire staff, at least half of whom went downstairs and bought liquor with it at the liquor store, which I think is now part of the intern housing. But it was a long time ago. It was so long ago I smoked in my office. That's how long ago it was. That's like riding a mule to work, just to put it in the context of American history. Smoke in your office? Yeah, I did. In fact, Matt Spalding told me to stop one day, and I thought, wow, this modernization program is moving too fast for me. I can't deal with it. I've always been conservative in the truest sense. But Matt, you were right, and I quit. And anyway. But yes, it was a long time ago. And in the course of that job, though I didn't get rich, to be honest with you, I did learn what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, which was become a journalist. And that was really under the guidance of a man called Adam Meyerson, who ran it, who was, that was 32 years ago. And to this day, he really is the kindest person I've ever worked for. Just kind and patient and exactly, he thought I was completely nuts. He thought I was a lunatic. And I could tell he thought that. But he was patient with me through my entire year and a half there, helped me get my next job at a newspaper in Arkansas because no one else would hire me, but he set me up with this job. He walked into my cubicle and said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And so I called my bride, who was a religion teacher at the local Episcopal school, and I said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And what a wonderful woman she's turned out to be. And she said, "Of course. Is that near Colorado?" Quote. But she was willing to go there. Very much a Northeasterner at heart, but and we did, and we loved it. But I got there because Adam Meyerson felt that it was his job to help me get my next job, because his job was to train up reasonable people and put them in journalism, even if it meant sending them to Arkansas. And I was thinking about Heritage this morning in the shower, not a place I think about it, but I did today. And what makes it great, and one of the best things about Heritage over time, longitudinally, 50 years say, is that Heritage has always hired a lot of people. And that is an underrated thing. It really is. Giving people a job, even if it's 14 grand a year plus a $100 bill for liquor, you change someone's life. You put them on a trajectory. At least that's true for me. I mean, I had not succeeded in school, to put it mildly. And I did not feel, I always felt like I was smart. Not one other person felt that way. Until I got to Heritage. I'm not sure they were super impressed, but they treated me like an adult. Because they had high intellectual standards. They were standards of honesty. And the idea at Heritage when I worked there wasn't just that we're fighting this war against the other side, of course, but it did not logically follow from that at Heritage that you could say whatever you wanted. Just because the other side was rotten didn't mean you could be rotten. They really hewed to the highest standards of factual accuracy, to intellectual honesty. They really meant it. They did. And even if you didn't agree with them, they were very serious about it. They were intellectually serious people, every single person I worked with. The receptionist in the office at Policy Review was going to school at night to learn Russian. And then the week I started at Policy Review, the Soviet Union collapsed, which was an amazing thing. The coup against Gorbachev in the third week of August 1991 was the week I started at Heritage. And in retrospect, of course, you never appreciate the significance of things as they happen to you. You can't really know what the movie's about until it ends. But at the time, we didn't really appreciate how, well, two things. One, our entire political orientation was based on this war between the United States and the Soviet Union, this Cold War, but very much a war. And every part of our politics, as you well remember, those of you my age and older remember, every part of our politics revolved around that central conflict. We were in conflict with a country that was both anti-markets and anti-Christian. And that put in stark relief our own beliefs. And what would happen when that ended? When there
9/11 and then Afghanistan for 2 decades, and then now Ukraine. They didn't let it go.
There wasn't that clear contrast. That's the first thing. And of course, the second thing is we could never have known the third week of August 1991, as we saw totalitarianism die, that it would ever come here. We just couldn't imagine that. We believe that victories were permanent. They're not, of course. That's the first lesson of history. Nothing is permanent except our own demise and God. But we didn't kind of get that. If you told me then that this week the Department of Justice would have indicted a group of people I don't agree with, by the way, on a lot of different issues, Black nationalist socialists from Florida, okay, kind of not my demographic, but would have indicted them for criticizing the US position, the Biden administration's position on the war in Ukraine, and charged them with felonies for which they're each facing 10 years in prison. If you told me that could happen here, I would have laughed at you. No, we have a First Amendment. That can't happen here, but it has, that and a lot of other things, which are gravely unsettling, actually, in people who were rooted in the Cold War story and the reality of the Cold War, again, my age, 53, kind of know where that goes. So the purpose of my talk, which by the way, I will keep brief. I'm an inveterate talker. I can literally talk forever. You can't even imagine my capacity for loquaciousness. I mean, it has no end. It's a bottomless well. You know, if you dropped a quarter off the observation deck of the Empire State Building, how long would it take to hit the sidewalk? That was always what we talked about when we were kids. You would never hear it in my case. I can literally go on first. So I will stop, and Kevin and I are gonna have a conversation which I think will be much more edifying. But I would just say two things about the present moment, because I think about them all the time. And I brood on this constantly. And then I take every afternoon, because fundamentally I'm Swedish, I take a sauna every day. As a rest, I do, I'm not kidding, every single day, never miss it. And my whole family does, it's like our one cultural contribution. Oh, we're Swedish, ooh, it's a very deep ethnicity. Oh yes, a lot of Swedish traditions. You should hear our comedy, it's hilarious. But the one thing I do is take a sauna to kind of get out of my head and get away from all this stuff, and I never can, and I just use my time in the sauna to brood more. But here are two conclusions I've come to, which I think are slightly less depressing than the most obvious, which is the country's really going at high speed in the wrong direction. Yeah, no kidding. Like in ways that are just unfathomable. And for people my father's age, for example, who's 82 and such a decent man, and I could go on forever about my dad, who I saw this morning, you know, was born in an orphanage called the Home for Little Wanderers in Boston, and became a success and the head of a federal agency and served in the Marine Corps and sort of lived the America that you imagine is possible for people who are smart and try hard and all that. For people of that age, it's too much, actually. The change is too abrupt. They can't metabolize it, really. It's too horrifying. But for those of us who are still engaged in trying to figure out what this means and not just repelled by it, I would say two things that I think we're thinking about. The first is you look around and you see so many people break under the strain, under the downward pressure of whatever this is that we're going through. And you look with disdain and sadness as you see people you know become quislings, you see them revealed as cowards, you see them going along with a new thing, which is clearly a poisonous thing, a silly thing. You know, saying things you know they don't believe because they want to keep their jobs. If there's a single person in this room who hasn't seen that through George Floyd and COVID and the Ukraine war, raise your hand. Oh, nobody? Right, you all know what I'm talking about. And you're so disappointed in people. You know you are, and you realize that the herd instinct is maybe the strongest instinct. I mean, it may be stronger than the hunger and sex instincts, actually. The instinct, which again is inherent to be like everybody else and not to be cast out of the group, not to be shunned, that's a very strong impulse in all of us from birth. And it takes over, unfortunately, in moments like this, and it's harnessed, in fact, by bad people in moments like this to produce uniformity. And you see people going along with this and you lose respect for them. And that certainly happened to me at scale over the past 3 years. I'm not mad at people, I'm just sad, I'm disappointed. How could you go along with this? You know it's not true, but you're saying it anyway? Really, you're putting your pronouns in your email? You're ridiculous. You know, but no one else thinks it's ridiculous. Oh no, it's your pronouns in the email. What does that even mean? What does it even mean? You're saying things you can't define. LBGTQIA+? Who's the plus? The plus is invited to my show anytime. Find a plus and I'll interview him. What's it like to be a plus? Am I a plus? I'm serious. I feel like I'm an addition. Does that make me a plus? No one even knows what it is. And the whole society, LGBTQIA+. All right, what's the plus? Oh, shut up, racist. Okay. So you reach that place and you feel, and this is one of the reasons, Father Scalia, I was actually overcome a little bit with emotion as you prayed, because I realized that I was so upset by the behavior of some people I love, frankly, in a country I revere and always have, that I wasn't praying for the country. You know, that's on me, and we all should be. But back to my point. So you see the sadness happening. But there is, as there always is, this is a fact of nature and theology and of observable reality, there is a countervailing force at work always. There's a counterbalance to the badness. It's called goodness. And you see it in people. So for every 10 people who are putting he and him in their electronic JP Morgan email signatures, there's one person who's like, no, I'm not doing that. Sorry, I don't want to fight, but like, I'm not doing that. It's a betrayal of what I think is true. It's a betrayal of my conscience, of my faith. of my sense of myself, of my dignity as a human being, of my autonomy. I am not a slave, I am a free citizen, and I'm not doing that. And there's nothing you can do to me to make me do it. And I hope it won't come to that. But if it does come to that, here I am. Here I am. It's Paul on trial. Here I am.
Rock me like a hurricane.
And you see that in people, and it's a completely unexpected assortment of people. I'm really interested in cause and effect, and as I noted at the outset of my remarks and my ability to predict the future, working on that. But because I'm sort of paid to predict things, I try and think a lot about, what connects certain outcomes that I should have seen before they occurred. And in this case, there is no thread that I can find that connects all of the people who've popped up in my life to be that lone brave person in the crowd who says, no, thank you. You could not have known who these people are. They don't fit a common profile. Some are people like me. Some of them don't look like me at all. Some of them are people I despised on political grounds just a few years ago. I could name their names, but you may not even know about their transformations, and I don't want to wreck your dinner by telling you who they are. But there's in one case someone who I made fun of on television, and certainly in my private life in vulgar ways, who was really the embodiment of everything I found repulsive, who in the middle of COVID decided, no, I'm not going along with this. And once you say one true thing and stick with it, all kinds of other true things occur to you.
Now, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to play this, because I think that this is when we talk about the psychology of red pilling, or the tactics of red pilling, and then the psychology behind it. It really, you don't know what that first thing is going to be. But so he describes a situation where he just, I'm like, I was lied. This was not what I was told it was. Then it makes you wonder, well, what about this other thing? And what about this other thing? And then what about this other thing? And it snowballs.
The truth is contagious. Lying is, but the truth is as well. And the second you decide to tell the truth about something, you are filled with this, I don't want to get supernatural on you, but you are filled with this power from somewhere else. Try it.
So another part of that is that people who are essentially trapped inside of the narrative matrix, right, that I call it, that believe the media and believe all that, part of the reason why they cling to it, or they reject any challenge to it, is because of that fear. That fear is from the lies. They don't know it's lies. They don't understand why they're anxious about it. They don't really know why they get mad when you try to challenge them with it. But it's this kind of feeling that he's talking about. It's a righteous feeling versus one of a nefarious nature.
Tell the truth about something. You feel it every day. The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become. That's completely real. It's measurable in the way that you feel. And of course, the opposite is also true. The more you lie, the weaker and more terrified you become. We all know that feeling. You lie about something, and all of a sudden you're a prisoner of that lie. You are diminished by it. You are weak and afraid. Drug and alcohol use is the same way. It makes you weak and afraid. But you look around and you see these people, and some of them really have paid a heavy price for telling the truth. And they are cast out of their groups, whatever those groups are, but they do it anyway. And I look on at those people with the deepest possible admiration. I am paid to do that. I face no penalty. Someone came up to me like, you're so brave. Really? I'm a talk show host. It's like I can have any opinion I want. That's my job. That's why they pay me. It's not brave to tell the truth on a cable news show. And if you're not doing that, you're really an idiot. You're really craven. You're lying on television. Why would you do that? You're literally making a living to say what you think, and you can't even do that? Please. But how about if you're a senior vice president at Citibank? I'm serious. At Citibank. And you're making, $4 million a year. And you've got 3 kids in Bedford, and 2 are in boarding school, and 1 starting at Wesleyan next year. And you need this job, honestly. And your whole sector is kind of collapsing, and you know that. There is no incentive whatsoever for you to tell the truth about anything. You just go into the little re-education meetings and you're like, yeah, diversity is our strength. That's exactly right. We need equity in the capital markets. Okay, all right. So if you're the one guy who refuses to say that, you are a hero, in my opinion. And I know some of them. In fact, my job is to interview them. And I sit back and I look at these people and I give them more credit than I do people who display physical courage, which is often impulsive, by the way. And I'm not denigrating physical courage, which I deeply admire, but you interview people who do amazing things, who rush into the proverbial burning building. And like every man is kind of trained from birth to fantasize about what he would do when the building catches fire and you hear a baby crying, and so you run inside. No one is trained to stand up in the middle of a DEI meeting at Citibank and say, this is nonsense. And the people who do that, they have my deepest admiration. And so their example really gives me hope. It thrills me. I talk to them all day long, people like that. That's the first thing. We should, in this sad moment of profound and widespread destruction of the institutions that people who share our views built, by the way, earlier generations that would agree substantially with every person in this room, they built those and now they're being destroyed. And that's so depressing. But we can also see rising in the distance new things, new institutions led by new people who are every bit as brave as the people who came before us. Amen. Here's the second thing I'd like to say before I get to the conversation with Dr. Roberts, which is that it might be time to start to reassess the terms we use to describe what we're watching. So when I started at Heritage, the presumption was, and this is a very Anglo-American assumption, that the debates we're having are kind of rational debates about the way to get to mutually agreed upon outcomes, right? So like we all want the country to be more prosperous and free and people to be less oppressed or whatever. And so we're gonna argue about tax rates, and I think higher tax gets us there. I'm like Keynesian and you disagree, or an Austrian or whatever. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers and they write their papers and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me because I don't have any. I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever been invented. It's not even a Christian religion at this point, I say with shame. But I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with that mindset. Policy papers don't account for it at all. If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation, let's sexually mutilate children. I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? It has nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad, well, I think sometimes it's necessary, that's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that and victims of rape. I get it. Of course I understand that and I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. There's not a society in history that didn't practice human sacrifice. Not one, I checked. Even the Scandinavians, I'm ashamed to say. It wasn't just the Mesoamericans, it was everybody. So that's what that is. Well, what's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of I would say, widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, I mean, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true, it is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's just true. I'm not calling for religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not what, and I'm certainly not backing the Republican Party. I mean, ugh. I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a prayer about it. I'm serious. Like, why not? And I'm saying that to you, not as some kind of evangelist. I'm literally saying that to you as an Episcopalian, the Samaritans of our time. I'm coming to you from the most humble and lowly theological position you can. I'm literally an Episcopalian, okay? And even I have concluded it might be worth taking just 10 minutes out of your busy schedule to say a prayer for the future, and I hope you will.
Okay, let's see. So then they have let me see that transcript real here. Oh, this is interesting because it's. This is funny because this is the last speech he gave just before they fired him. So this is like, I think maybe the weekend, like that weekend before.
But because you made your first point 7 times, we only have a few minutes.
Well, that's kind of a signature move for me.
Yeah. Must be the elitist in you.
Well, there's a lot of that still.
We've got time for 2 questions.
Great.
But all seriousness, Tucker, thank you. What a great message.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yep.
It was heartfelt.
Things go south at Fox News, there's always a job for you at Heritage.
Well, you've saved me before. So thank you.
We do that for a lot of people very.
So anyway, just thought that was interesting that he actually, yeah. I mean, this is what this. It's his the way the video is labeled. It's literally, it says Tucker Carlson's last address before leaving Fox News. So, and there you go. All right. So that was the Heritage Foundation. If anyone's looking for it, just Tucker Carlson Heritage Foundation. You'll be able to find that super easily. Okay, so moving on, shall we? Let's go over to. Let's do. No, we'll do this one and then we'll do the other one. Okay.
At it again, and we've got an interesting story here. Nothing crazy, nothing over the top. All right, we just chilling today. We just chilling.
So he's titled this video. Sadly, these people are these are the people they made. It's all their fault.
But nonetheless, very interesting and kind of funny in a way. Like, share, comment, hit that subscribe button if you are new. If you would like to help me in this channel out even further too, watch until the very end. Helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Also, check out my merch, DocRichClothing.com. The link is it's the first link down below. Go and check it out. And let's dive in.
Conservative men tend to be a little more traditional, maybe a little bit more chivalrous. They shoot, they lift, they have values. Now, I know I'm generalizing here, but follow me. Liberal men, on the other hand, can be a little more feminine. And that can be a turnoff for women. Liberal women want a manly man and a liberal man. But they're realizing that combo, hard to come by.
As a liberal woman, it is really hard to find a man who is willing to play the more traditional masculine role in the relationship in today's day and age, who is not a conservative. A man who wants to pay on the first date, who wants to open your door, who has that want and desire to take care of you and to provide, who is not a conservative. So I don't really know what to do because I don't want to compromise my morals and values just to find a man.
Well,
he started before I had a chance to stop it. Go ahead, Doc.
invest in cats and kitty litter. Hey, I'm just saying. Oh, man, because you might be lonely for the rest of your life. In today's climate where things have gone, you probably will be lonely for the rest of your life. You're going to be singing that, whose song was that? I'm so lonely. I'm Mr. Lonely. I have nobody. Whole lot of it. All right. Oh, man.
Because I don't want to compromise my morals and values just to find a man.
But what morals and values? You're looking for those traits. So you're saying that morals and values are tied to a political ideology. There's your problem. That's your problem.
But am I asking to have my cake and eat it too?
The woman behind that video, Petra McGill, is a liberal looking for love. And she joins me now. All right,
You're
so
not gonna
Petra,
find
what
it.
happened on this date with this liberal guy that you just said, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore?
Okay, so Jesse, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It was actually a date with a conservative guy who I just went out with a few nights prior, and he ended up making it a very strong point that he took his role as the man in the relationship to be the provider, to really show up for his wife or his girlfriend in a way that is very masculine. And he really wanted to take care of her and do all of the manly duties in the home. And he, advocated for a very nuclear traditional family. So that's where that TikTok came from. And TikTok, for me, they're just my thoughts on the...
So you were chilling with a conservative and was like, hey, I want a slice of this cake right here. Okay. But you want a diet. Huh. Well, yeah, you're in a little bit of a coinky dink here, shorty. You're in a little bit of a coinky dink. Because you ain't going to find too many liberal men that are like conservatives. I'm just saying. Ladies, y'all can probably attest to this too. Okay? Especially today. In today's world, where the left is gone today, man, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say. I'm not even going to say that. But, yeah, you're not going to find too many manly men that are liberals. Are you going to have outliers? Yeah, sure. There's always outliers in everything. Most things. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting about, but most things. In 99.9% of things, there's going to be outliers. So, yes, there's outlier liberal men who are going to be manly and, want that traditional type of manly role and really want that. But for the most part, it's not what you're going to get. And it's your own fault. It's your own fault. It's your own party's fault. Nobody's fault except for your own. This is what you asked for. This is what you wanted. You wanted to push for all of this equality and, everybody's the same. When in reality, we're not the same. We're not. That is a fact. I have a dick and balls. She does not. Well, unless she, had some surgical intervention and did some other things. But other than that, right, we're not the same. It's not the way God created us. I have the key and she has the lock. You know what that means, okay? Anyway, we're going to keep it somewhat PG here. But
Too late.
that's the monster that they created. It's kind of funny how, Democrats, and I've talked about this before, they start complaining about the very monsters that they created. You did this to yourself.
Yep.
The reason why you don't have options is because of what you have done. Well, not her directly, but her party, her side of the political aisle has done. You've gone way too far left, and you've drug all of the somewhat manly men along with you for the ride. And if they aren't manly men, then they aren't considered liberal. So yeah, you might have a 0.0001% chance of finding that guy. And he's probably already taken some. Good luck.
Fly.
Let's see. Thank you to Donna Libby over there on the Foxhole with the cookie. Much appreciated. And Doug's me with the can. Appreciate that support, guys. Thank you also to CK White Horse 180 with the cookie. And Sly Park with 1,200 gold pills. I appreciate the support there, Sly Park. Thanks for the efforts. So I guess there's something going on with Twitter where he freaked out at all the scraping that was going on, and so that he's like limiting the amount of tweets that people can have. That's because so the scraping part essentially. So if you have a website, and that website has a container on it that has a link to a tweet, and it wants to display that tweet, like a news article. A news article has this, and it has a tweet that's in there. That was scraped from the Twitter API through the Twitter API, which is basically the data section of Twitter, and you have to apply. I have my own API keys because I was doing some other stuff for just general research over the past few years, right, with a lot of the Q stuff. So then they basically he's like freaking out about it, and because of that, he's limited people's accounts on the number of tweets they can view a day, and so I don't think that's permanent. That would kill the site. I think he was just trying to make a big deal out of it because he's trying to draw the corporate side attention to the scraping to see. I don't know what he wants to do with it. The point is that that's apparently what's going on. So if anyone's kind of locked out of their account, it's kind of been weird over there on Twitter. Apparently that's what's going on. Let's see. Thank you to Filter Dog 1 with the cam with the message. This guy needs to be a regular. Yes, we'll go back to definitely if I'm ever looking for a palate cleanser, I will make sure to include Doc Rich on this because he has a good point of view.
Coming up that I decided to share with the world. Foolishly, may I add. But yeah, that's where that TikTok came from.
So are these liberal guys that you're dating, they're asking you to split dinner? Like, what's going on?
Okay, so both sides, I would have to say, conservative and liberal men, I've been asked to split the bill more than once,
Wow.
too many times to count, might I add. Yeah, it's really frustrating because, although I am liberal.
The fact that she's... Oh, man, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Hey, but I'm going to keep it real. If we go on a date and I find out you're a liberal, I'm probably splitting the bill with you, too. Because I know it's just not going to work. I'm not wasting my hard-earned cash on you.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because, although I am liberal, there is still that traditional kind of masculine role that I'm looking for in a guy. And I would say showing up on the first date as a man and paying is something that the majority of women are looking for, regardless of your political affiliation.
What else?
Well, don't be liberal, and you'll get it, guaranteed. Don't be liberal, and you got it. Just saying. But hey, it's your life. It's your life, boo boo. It's your life, boo boo. You do you. But hey, you might have to be invested in some kitty litter. I'm just saying.
Are you looking for that liberal men are not providing in the dating world?
Like you said, liberal men in some scenarios, from my personal experience, have been more feminine. But I would say,
I wonder why. Kind of funny she said that. Can we get that on repeat, please? Instant replay.
from my personal experience, have been more feminine. But I would say, I mean, just for a guy to show up, be loving, be respectful, both liberals and conservatives, men that I've dated, have done this. But that's mainly what I'm looking for, is just that respect, that love, and that care. And I think the majority of women can join me on that.
I think you're right. What these men that are acting liberal, these liberal guys, I mean, acting feminine, are they crying?
No, of course not. No, they're not crying. I would say
they are on the inside.
what we see as feminine, or what we consider feminine, is a guy who's maybe more in touch with his feelings, or who's more, he has an ability to be vulnerable. And that is to be respected, of course.
Well, you know what? I blame you, Petra. You women have been saying men need to be open about their emotions, need to be more vulnerable. So these liberal guys are trying to do what you want, and now you don't want to date them. So
Because that's not actually what women
that's not
want.
how that
They
works.
say it because it sounds good. Ladies, now I want you to be completely honest, ladies. Completely honest. Don't BS me here. Don't BS me. Don't you lose a little bit of respect if you're sitting in front of your guy and he's super emotional and crying about stuff? Like, don't you lose a little bit of respect? Not in a sense like if his mother dies or something. Like, come on, everybody cries then. Come on, let's be real. But don't you be real? Be real.
again, thanks for nothing.
No, not true. Not necessarily true, Jesse. We
Facts.
still want to date them. Trust me. I go for the men who are vulnerable. I promise.
All right. Well, good luck out there. I'm sure you're going to find a great guy, that perfect combo that you're looking for. Petra, good luck.
Thanks so much.
I mean, if she does find him, it's because she was featured on Fox, where, you know, there's some conservative men still left. But other than that, cats and kitty litter. Cats and kitty litter.
Oh, ruthless, man. No holds, no punches pulled. Okay, let's see. What do we got? Oh, yeah, let's do this.
Bud Light sales are in the toilet. There's no end in sight.
So this is the JP one I was talking about. So it's a pitch meeting to save Bud Light.
Bud Light sales are in the toilet. There's no end in sight. And you two marketing executives are failing this company.
We're sorry, sir.
Yep, clearly we can do better.
We need to turn this thing around and convert the boycotters back to customers.
How do you recommend we do that, sir?
Well, the prime demographic of our former customers, now boycotters, are freedom-loving American men, mostly with conservative values. We need marketing campaigns to focus on common ground to win them back. I need ideas.
Of course. Well, as you can see, we've prepared some ideas that I think you're gonna love.
I'm waiting.
Okay, hear me out. MMA. People love MMA, so we could leverage their love for it in an ad campaign.
That's not bad, but how would that look?
Here's the vision of the commercial. 2 fighters in the octagon. Now these are female fighters.
Shows that Bud Light is inclusive to women without crossing the line into the other 70 genders.
Yep, that's actually smart.
One of the women is wearing Bud Light branded shorts and a sports bra, so of course she's winning. Now she is pummeling the other woman, and I mean beating the out of her. And that makes Bud Light look good.
Okay.
I mean, she's really pummeling her. Whew.
Just beating her to an absolute pulp.
And she doesn't just get knocked out, she collapses into a pool of her own blood.
That's definitely violent.
She suffered too much trauma and is too unconscious to tap out, so her corner throws the towel in, which signifies the Bud Light fighter wins.
And then in the post-fight interview scene, she reveals she's trans.
Born a man, acting as a woman for the last few weeks. Brilliant, right?
Everybody would love her for having the bravery to defy the odds, get in the ring, and brutally beat the other woman almost to death. We think it would make Bud Light look really good.
That's absolutely the worst idea possible.
I don't follow your thinking on that, sir. but okay.
Next.
What if we do a large-scale publicity campaign where we donate 10% of our profits to underprivileged children to cure them of their genitals?
Next.
Okay, so we obviously have to resonate with the values of our core consumers out there.
That's right.
So, to accomplish that objective, imagine this commercial. There's a sensual pillow fight going on.
We're talking slow motion, happy smiles, feathers going everywhere.
And it's all menstruating men. Menses.
That's right, white pillows, white sheets, just to accentuate the presence of the masculine menstruation.
Menses.
Menses.
Next.
Sir, I think we're missing the whole boat here and making this way harder on ourselves than it needs to be.
How so?
With all the people boycotting us, why don't we just tell them that we identify them as our customers, and then through the magic of however that works, they'll start buying our beer again?
That's actually a really good idea.
I think we need something a little more based in reality.
Got it. Why don't we go all in and sponsor a Pride event?
Love it.
How would that do anything other than drive even more customers away?
Well, people have been boycotting us presumably because they're angry that we haven't been taking more of a pro-trans stance.
That's not
And
what
sponsoring a Pride event would cast away any doubt about where we stand on the issue.
they're boycotting us because we're shoving this stuff down their throats in the first place.
Oh, really? I guess I wasn't really reading between the lines on that. Like, you sure about that?
Positive.
So you're saying that sponsoring a Pride event would make things worse? I'm not following.
Yes.
Wait, so we shouldn't sponsor a Pride event?
Definitely not.
Okay. Well, we already did.
What?
It was a big one, too.
Yeah, over the weekend we sponsored a massive Pride event in Toronto. We had quite the presence there.
Why would you do that? This makes this terrible situation even worse.
Sir, I think you're overreacting. This wasn't just any Pride event. At this one, there were adults parading naked in front of children.
That's the worst scenario.
I don't think so. In fact, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you see how it boosted our sales over the weekend. Oh no, they did go down.
Yeah, we were looking at the graph behind the board, and it's always hard to tell which way these things go, but yeah, they went down.
Yes, they did.
I can't believe sponsoring a Pride event didn't work.
Yeah, I don't believe it either. Let me look at these numbers again.
Guys, I'm about to lose my patience. Our company is dying. There's no end in sight unless we turn this around. We need good ideas that will actually resonate with our customers. Just think of what helped us become America's best-selling beer in the first place. Horses, mountains, cowboys, that kind of thing.
All right, picture this. Getting back to our American roots, let's say it's a Western scene, and we got a couple cowboys.
Okay.
They're camping together
Oh God.
at the base of a mountain.
I don't think this will do it.
Oh no, it's not what you think.
Thank God. I'm listening.
And while camping, they savagely fornicate with each other.
And even though their love is as strong for each other as they are hard for each other, they know that society will never accept them.
So, they take the edge off with a Bud Light.
That's a little bit in the opposite direction of where we want to go.
Well, get this idea, sir. You know how we used to run those Real Men of Genius ads?
Yeah, those were super successful.
Right. So we probably don't want to do that again. But what if we reboot them with a more equitable version?
Real men's toxic masculinity.
In hindsight, we made a mockery of women with Mrs. Dylan Mulvaney, and that's where we went wrong. So this time, we need to make a mockery of men.
Showing in a non-comedic fashion all the ways that the toxicity of men, our primary demographic, negatively affects society. I think that'll win back customers.
Quit protecting and providing for your family, you racist. Testosterone is just as bad for you as alcohol is. You know, that kind of thing.
I'll have to pass on this one. This is hopeless.
I don't think hope is lost, sir, because based on our market research, there's a huge demographic of people out there that doesn't drink our beer, but if we could convince them to, that would be huge revenue for us.
Who's this demographic?
Pregnant birthing persons.
I like it. Completely untapped demographic. I can't believe you didn't tell me about this idea.
I just thought of it.
It's so good.
Yeah, just imagine an all-out campaign targeting them. I think we could become the go-to beer for pregnant birthing persons.
Sir, should we start plotting out the ad scenarios and PR campaign?
Sure, go right ahead.
I know who would be good to play a pregnant birthing person.
Who?
Dylan Mulvaney.
Perfect for the role. Let's see if They is available.
I'll call They right now. saying that sponsoring a pride event would make things worse?
What's up, friends? I want to tell you about my new satellite phone, which I absolutely love.
All right, satellite phones. Cool. So if you're prepping, satellite phones. All right. What do we got? Let's go over to... It's a time to get into... I have my sub thing here. Give me just a minute here to set up the rest of the show. I just need to grab a couple windows and move them around in the monitors a little bit. Let's see. Thank you to Unchained 01 over there on the foxhole with the cookie. The message: soy boys don't have balls. I would assume that would be true.
Back at it again.
Let's see. I think I added something to this, but I need to refresh it. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna get into. We've seen this lady before. She's like some kind of a claims to be like an expert on like dictators and things like that. So she like tries to compare what Trump's doing or Trump's message to something that's completely off the rails. I think her take is more unhinged than whatever, like by far, whatever she's trying to accuse us of going along with. So here we go.
Orders and why it matters, coming up next.
The authoritarian playbook.
So in just a few hours, thousands of people are expected to converge on the town of Pickens, South Carolina for a 4th of July event headlined by none other than Donald Trump. We don't know what's in store for the gathering crowd, but we do know that all week the Republican frontrunner has been testing out a disturbing new slogan, part of a stream of disinformation about his federal indictment.
Every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it a great badge of courage. I'm being indicted for you. Essentially, I'm being indicted for you because I'm being indicted for you. And I believe that you is far more than 200 million people that love our country, not the 75 million people that we got. That's what they said we got.
No, you're being indicted for you, boo. I'm being indicted for you. That comes right out of the authoritarian playbook. It's rhetoric that my next guest says resembles the likes of former fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, who built a devoted following by cultivating a bond with followers based on personality rather than principles or party politics. Trump has made it a staple of his platform to cast his criminal indictments as a campaign of political persecution being waged against all of his supporters and portraying himself as the only one who can rescue them and the country from their enemies. For more on this, I'm joined by Ruth Ben-Ghiat, a professor of history at NYU. She's an expert on authoritarianism across the globe, author of the Lucid newsletter, which follows threats to democracy, and she's also the author of the important book, Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present. Ruth, it's so good to see you again. Trump's savior rhetoric, it's in one sense not new, but it is escalating. In your...
How does it escalate? He's said this for a while now. How does saying the same thing escalate? How is saying the same thing escalation?
Study of all of this. Why do you think that is?
Well, because he's in more and more hot water legally. The indictment is a big challenge, actually, to his personality cult. And Trump is a cult leader. He's not a conventional politician.
No, it's a cult leader now. Oh, that's not new.
So,
as far as you guys are claiming that.
So like other strongmen of the past, he has to be not only the savior of the nation, but the victim, the person who takes the hits.
Is that what's going on or not?
For the nation. So what we've seen is what's so disturbing about this, I'm being indicted for you, I'm just in the way, they really want you, is something that builds on January 6th, actually.
No, it doesn't. January 6th was its own thing, built on other frustrations, which is essentially part of the deep state, which actually does exist, lady. The deep state trying to grab control over essentially the one civic duty that we have for control of our government. So you say that they're coming for us. They did. That was. If you want to know what January 6th was, that's what that was. You came and you stole the pot. You stole the people's vote. The one sacrosanct thing in our civic duty. You stole it, and you know it, because you know why we know it? Because you wouldn't let us look at it.
That it's not enough for him to be the victim, because, you know, as these, he's got 37 counts against him, other legal problems, people could say, well, he's just got too much baggage. Let's go to somebody else.
Then that's what they're trying to do, and that's not going to happen. It's not because there's some cult-like thing going on. It's because there's an idea that's larger than Trump at play here, and you just refuse to see it.
But so to
or address it at least.
Avoid that, he has to make them the target, that his followers have to feel that they are in danger, that there's an existential threat against them, not him. And that's what he does. He ropes them in by saying, the indictment is, I'm taking it for you.
Mm-hmm. So right there, she's saying that we Trump supporters are too dumb to see anything that is a threat to us or our rights outside of him saying something, which is which is essentially a sentiment that they've been doing for years. What do they say? But for Donald Trump going out and talking about the rigged election in the months in November and December of 2020, that there would be no January 6th, that no one would even know that there was a problem with the election if Trump and his surrogates hadn't talked about this and promoted the quote unquote big lie. No one would even know about it. Bullshit. It's bullshit.
And that can lead people to commit violence on his behalf. And we already saw this on January 6th, which was a leader cult rescue operation. People converged. It was a what? He saw this on January 6th, which was a leader cult rescue operation.
January 6th was a leader cult rescue operation. You mean a cult leader rescue operation? You didn't even say the words in the proper order to make sense. All right, let's see. I think at a Timberjet over there on the Foxhole with the phone, with the message, a little catch up from last week when I was broke as a joke. No problem there, Timberjet. And please, I do appreciate the support, but I appreciate the support. It's always always appreciated, never required. I think that's what I used to say a few months ago. So I do appreciate the support. Let's see. Thank you to Thick Ray with the can with the message. Cheers to you, Pinata, on this 4th of July. I don't know how you do it, but God bless you. Hashtag the truth is loose. All right. Good to see you out there, Ray. Hope you guys having a good time this weekend. Let's see. It's always weird when the holiday falls on a Tuesday or something right in the middle of the week, because it's like, is this? We're celebrating it early, but I might take. At least on work, I'll probably take, my day job. I'll probably take the 4th off. See, I don't know. I need to talk to my friend group and see what's going on. I might be missing something right now. Who knows? All right. Anyway, I appreciate the support. I really do. All right, here we go. So she just said a bunch of gobbledygook mixed up word salad, and I'm surprised that she didn't throw the word fascist in there somewhere.
People converged. He summoned them to rescue him in his time of distress.
I mean, okay, so help us understand. Do people actually believe that Donald Trump is taking one for them? I mean, they didn't hide documents in their bathrooms.
Yes, well, he's allowed to have what he had. So you're starting off down the road where you need to back up a little bit because you're off the actual path of legality.
They weren't involved in all the crazy stuff that Donald Trump is in. So why do people actually stand there and believe that Donald Trump is doing something for them? Like when he says, if you get in trouble, I'm going to pay your legal bills. No, he's not. I mean, how does that work? What is the trigger that people actually get sucked into believing that?
That's the question of the century and the last century, too. This demagoguery is very compelling, and the most successful.
I'm sorry, this century and last century, too? Oh, because of her whole Mussolini thing. Okay, got it.
This demagoguery is very compelling, and the most successful of these guys, from Mussolini, who was a journalist, to Berlusconi, who also had a victim cult, to Erdogan in Turkey, who cries. He cries on camera if he feels his popularity is slipping. They know how to manipulate people. But the other really
Yes, Donald Trump, same as Erdogan of Turkey.
important thing is Trump's been setting this up for years by poisoning the public mind, by turning people against all of the entities that could prosecute him. Because we have to remember,
Well, then stop persecuting him.
for authoritarians, the purpose of being in power is not governing, it's to commit crimes with impunity, getting away with things. So for years, he's been setting up the idea of the deep state.
There's no. You had Donald Trump put in office because everyone knew that there was a deep state. You have it fucking backwards. This is just ridiculous. Dumb lady.
And so who are the targets? All people or entities that can investigate him. The press, the DOJ, the FBI, they're all enemies now.
Well, thank you for confirming that you all collaborate together.
So, and these kinds of deep state paranoia was already part of the paranoid,
Paranoia.
Republican narratives before Trump came in.
Yeah, no shit. So you do know what I'm talking about, and that it was just paranoia, guys. Military industrial complex. It's just paranoia. What are you talking about? Big pharma, all the different stuff that lefties used to care about. Come on, that's just a right-wing conspiracy theory. See how that works? So they label that, and I guess this is ultimately how they were able to pull the wool over everyone's eyes for COVID, was because they aligned the type of things, and because Trump was in office when it happened, they were able to say that, well, he's not telling you what's going on. He's lying to you. He's doing this. You need to trust us. And these people with their stupid Trump derangement syndrome just couldn't fucking help themselves and went right along to get along. And so the same people who were at Occupy Wall Street with signs and stuff for months, camping out to protest against the big government and the large corporate machines, went right along with it. Just completely, you talk about that other lady talking about her morals. She just couldn't date a conservative because of her morals. You just completely flushed everything down the fucking toilet when it came to COVID. It's beyond comprehension for me on how deep these people are inside of the psychosis that is whatever this narrative matrix is, and it's hard for us to comprehend it because we're out of it. But when you're in it, it feels real.
So people have been primed for years to believe this. Mm-hmm. And then Trump comes in and he has so much charisma and he makes it all about himself.
So you've got...
She's like, I just said something super smart. No, you didn't. It was a bunch of bullshit, and your logic is flawed.
Trump already indicating that he's likely going to skip the first GOP primary debate. I don't think he's going. There's no incentive for him to go. And the fact that he doesn't feel it's necessary to participate in his own party's debate is really telling.
There's no debate. He's the candidate. So why would he need to go? He's polling 40 points in some states. I think, what did I see? Iowa? He's 44. Over DeSantis. DeSantis is almost into single digits at this point. I mean, that's the trajectory. You're looking at trending. The trending is not favorable to that. So go ahead, let them squabble about the last 10%.
Telling, but what his counter-programming idea is to set up his own counter-programming and to have.
So thank you for telling us that what you're doing is programming.
Have his own, I guess.
Man, a lot of favors today. These people, I'll tell you, they're lumping themselves all in together. In this collusion of deep statery, and then now, thank you. I'm getting good stuff here. We're getting a lot of confirmation stuff.
Conversation with these voters. What does that tell us about him?
I think I missed the question.
Is really telling. But what his counter-programming idea is to set up his own counter-programming and to have his own, I guess, conversation with these voters. What does that tell us about him and the people you've studied who behave this way?
Well, what we've seen actually, so it's, you know, it's the story of the huge story here is how the GOP, we only have two parties, we're different than other countries, and they have their rules and their rituals, and presidential debates are part of that. And
Yes, so apparently, yeah, we're the crazy ones, and we're in a cult. But you have political rituals.
in comes Trump.
I don't know. I mean, I know what she means to be is, you know, routine thing, ritual things. But the way she says it, and the way that we know that these people probably operate off camera, I'm like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if some goat blood in a bowl somewhere, sitting on top of a stool somewhere. I don't even know why that came to mind, but just to make their candidates debate better. In the green, you know, something set up in the green room, like a pentagram or something with a bunch of candles around it.
Transforms the GOP into his personal tool, and he puts it under this authoritarian submission. And you see how Kevin McCarthy behaves, you know, as a kind of subaltern now. So all of the
What?
Mechanisms and
subalter
rituals like debate.
People hate Kevin McCarthy. Are you kidding me? We don't like him. They don't trust him. Come on, that's just, she did not say that.
And you see how Kevin McCarthy behaves, you know, as a kind of subaltern now.
Subaltern. All right, fancy word. Let me look at that.
So all of the mechanisms and rituals like debates, they don't work anymore if you're no longer part of a bipartisan democracy. And
all right, it is an officer in the British Army below the rank of captain, so essentially a second lieutenant. So it's of lower status. So that's what that means, subaltern. So I didn't know if that was a portmanteau, or she didn't say the word subalternate, or she meant to say whatever that. But so there you go. Our fancy word for today is subaltern.
And so what we're seeing with this, the counter-programming, not wanting to be in the debates, is part of this kind of cracking up or fragmentation or disintegration of things that were built for democracy, not for an authoritarian cult leader.
All right, Ruth Ben-Ghiat.
Just so pleased with herself. Just, I don't know. Trump is Hitler. Come on, bitch. It's just so fucking tired. It's just... like what? What specifically? The only thing they've only been able to point to at this point in time, besides what they made up, the only thing they can ever point to is January 6th. That's it. That's all they have. And this is why they needed to make that happen. They needed, when he left office, to have some sort of an appearance of some kind of a dictator or authoritarian that just would not leave. And my guess is that they when they game theoried that thing out, you guys remember that with the whole TIPS report or wherever the fuck it was? I'm sure it was called the TIPS report. Even the wall, no, was it? Who was it? Time magazine, right? They had a thing about how we fortified the election, or how they fortified the election using every means possible, corporate-wise and all. All right. Let's get into this. Oh yeah. Okay, here we go. We got Rachel Maddow's little sister here to tell us about something. I guess there was an incident in D.C. similar to the Kavanaugh scare or whatever it was with the an armed individual arrested out near Kavanaugh's home. But in that case, I think they had literally confessed to what they were doing. But yeah, Timberjet says that the Charleston riot with the very fine people. Yeah, I mean, I get that one. That one was, I mean, they tried to make that one out to be a lot more than it was, because what was it? The guy was going down an alley, and then they say that he killed someone. But I think, didn't they say that she basically had a cardiac event? It wasn't like the car caused her injury, like on her body. It was it was just literally she had a heart attack. Not saying that diminishes it, supposedly, but anyway.
This is a screen grab of video from inside the Capitol on January 6, 2021. The man pictured here is Taylor Taranto. He already faces several charges in connection with the Capitol riot. Yesterday, he was arrested near the Washington, D.C. home of former President Barack Obama. Police found 2 guns and 400 rounds of ammunition, along with a machete in the van he appeared to be living in.
All right, so he's living in a van in D.C. and happens to be around Obama's house. Okay.
D.C. prosecutors said that Taranto, seen here inside the Capitol during the insurrection, came to Washington to take House Speaker Kevin McCarthy up on his offer of letting January 6 defendants review security footage of the riot. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley writes that Taranto showed up at Obama's residence after former President Donald Trump posted screenshots on his Truth Social platform that featured a purported address for Obama's home. Quote,
What? Trump posted something that featured an address of Obama's home?
We got these losers surrounded, Taranto wrote on Telegram. See you in hell, Podestas and Obamas. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins me now.
All right, show Trump what Trump posted, or this is absolute bullshit. I hang on. I'm looking at Trump's page right now because I want to see what's going on with this. So what? So here. Let me, so you guys can see it too. So I'm over there on Truth Social here. I'm scrolling through. So they said, when did they say he posted at what? So he was arrested yesterday. So it had to be what? At least a few days old. So let's go down to 6 hours. Trump right here. He said he posted. So Trump posted this. He posted Obama's address. Are you shitting me? That would be like Secret Service level action type shit. If Trump's like, everyone, please go to Obama's house. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. All right, so 2 days ago, this is a retruth. Nothing about the address. Nothing about the address. Nothing here. Nothing here. Is this going to be one of those things where it's just an article that has something? Ooh, what's we'll definitely watch this one. Okay. Not seeing anything. Not seeing anything. Not seeing anything of the sort. I see a bunch of poll numbers. So what? So I see this here. Does he mention Obama in this letter? Doesn't seem to be. Does it just Stephen Miller endorsing somebody? Carrie Blake's book. So this is from 2 days ago. So I'm not seeing where he posted Barack Obama's address on his Truth Social account, and I don't think he deleted it because why would you? And not seeing anything of the sort. So what? So he was in a van, so maybe it took him longer than 2 days to get there, and this was something that I missed from even longer. So still going. Poll numbers, polls, GOP rivals, an op-ed DeSantis stuff. Now we're still 2 days out. Here's Jack Smith revealed. Anti-Trump council has Soros, Clinton, Obama links. So here, this could be something. So let's see. National Poll says, who is Jack Smith? Lives abroad. Married an Obama devotee. Producing. We've heard this article before. This is nothing new. This is a reposted article from, I think, a while ago. All right. Still looking for Barack Obama's home address in D.C. Let's see. It couldn't be that MSNBC is lying to me. It couldn't be that because they're such a very trusted outlet, even more trusted than probably CNN at this point, right? They would never try to come up with some sort of a bullshit story like that Trump posted Barack Obama's home address, which is probably public knowledge, by the way, and somehow this caused someone who was at January 6th, who's living in a van, and unfortunately, if you're living in a van, my guess is you're maybe not as mentally stable. Unfortunately, a horrible position to be in, but still, we are 3 days out here. I'm not seeing Barack Obama's home address. So, unless you can produce the post, you're fucking lying about it.
Ryan, first, what can you just tell us about what authorities know about this individual and when he was apprehended and what kind of threat he might have posed?
You know, frankly, I think that online sleuths knew more than law enforcement did in this case, because Taylor Toronto is someone they identified in August 2021. He's been locked since then as a January 6th participant. There's been zero doubt that he was inside the Capitol. He even posted his own video and asked when he was going to be arrested, but he was not arrested until yesterday. He was never charged. He was only facing a civil lawsuit from the widow of an officer who died of suicide after January 6th. His co-defendant in that civil lawsuit had been charged last year, has already been now sentenced to 60 days in federal prison. That was a DC chiropractor who lived just a couple of blocks from the Capitol. But those two really didn't know each other. They were just sort of next to each other during a lot of the January 6th attack. So, you know, this is an individual who's even creeped out, frankly, January 6th supporters who have been hanging out of the DC jail during their nightly protest. I was talking to one of them who was just, you know, really creeped out by what he was doing, said he was clearly troubled. He was living in that van there. On one of his live streams, he talked about how he was taking showers at the YMCA. So, you know, this is someone that sleuths have been paying attention to. And, you know, I've been following his Telegram for a bit. He posted about me at one point. So it's something that I was sort of keeping a pretty close eye on.
So what you're saying is that someone that they wanted to arrest anyway, they arrested him. And then because he had this stuff in here in his proximity, that somehow that just translates to, oh, yeah, obviously he wanted to assassinate President Barack Obama. Yeah.
But it's sort of incredible that it took to this point where, you know, where he was actually at the Obama's residence until he was actually.
Okay. No, was he at his residence, meaning that he was inside of the 10-mile square Washington, D.C., or was he actually like parked outside of his house? Because I feel like Secret Service would probably take exception to that.
Charged, even though, you know, this is someone who's been identified for nearly 2 years now.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate this in case people miss this. This is an individual who clearly was in the Capitol, was never charged with breaching the Capitol, has turned his life into a kind of like full-time January 6th person. He lives out of his van. He goes to January 6th events. He was named as a civil
Yes, January 6th events. Their next January 6th event will be this Sunday. Come on, what are you talking about? If January 6th events.
Defendant, but the widow of Brian Sicknick. But was never charged for entering the Capitol until apprehended by police after being caught near the Obama's residence with 400 rounds of ammunition, and now has been charged with entering the Capitol on January 6th.
Right. Yeah, it really is kind of amazing. It's Jeffrey Smith's widow, who's this officer who who sued Toronto there. It's just really, I mean, it really is astonishing because, you know, it's tough to figure out the rhyme or reason often in a lot of these cases, why cases are, you know, prioritized, why others aren't.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Ray Epps, like sometimes we care about people that go into the Capitol or tell people to riot or go into the Capitol, but sometimes we just don't, you know.
A lot of it has to do with the FBI field office and whether or not it's a priority for the field office there. And I think just clearly in Washington state, this wasn't. I've been watching Taylor Toronto videos of him coming to DC for, you know, a while now, right? In 2022, last year, he actually is going around and live streaming himself, walking around the grounds of the Capitol, goes up to a Capitol Hill police officer who had no clue, obviously, who he was, and shakes his hand and goes through this sort of, you know, routine with him and says, here I am walking around. I don't need a cane this time, because he had this weaponized cane that he...
A weaponized cane. He had a weaponized cane, all right? What? Because it was made out of metal and not wood or something? That makes it weaponized? I didn't know you could do that. Can you put a scope on it? Can you put on a scope on a weaponized cane?
Brought on January 6th, so he's sort of making a joke about that. But it's just, it really is one of...
You know what you need for that weaponized cane? Rocket launcher.
Those things where you're like, okay, this guy is...
Or I'm sorry, a grenade launcher. Grenade launcher.
In DC now. Seems like someone you might want to put to the top of the list, but...
Oh, wait a minute. I think we still have this one. Is it still on the list? Maybe not. No, those are the images. Oh, did I take all the images off? We remember we had the all the January 6th unselect committee stuff. I think I had where it's the limo as the AR-15 in blue, and then Trump as the accessory.
That just wasn't what was happening. There's a number of ways you could have brought a charge against him, or even had some sort of law enforcement interaction with him. It wouldn't be too tough, given that he's in a van. That's probably a safer situation than you would have in other scenarios. Say when he was in a home that was in a remote part of the country where the FBI would have to deploy resources out there. He sort of came to them. So I'm not sure.
Still not hearing how this has anything to do with Trump that you said in the beginning.
Why this wasn't more.
And it says the violent right. What was this? Was it? How was he arrested? You're not talking about the circumstances of his arrest. He just he got arrested and he was outside out of Obama's home. There was no threat made. There was no breach attempted. But just you're not providing enough information that would suggest the violent right and anything about this guy. He was arrested with weapons. So he was arrested, but he had weapons in his van, which he probably had, I'm assuming, legally. So if that's not, because it doesn't sound like you're saying he's charged with that. So what's the fucking problem?
Of a priority, given how clear it was. And I saw him in court. He came to the sentencing of his co-defendant in the civil suit, and was talked to by the marshals in the back there.
Just talk me through. I mean, Trump had posted this very weird, Phyllis Schlafly, newsletter, and then a few that contained the Obama's address, and then he responded to, how much do we know about?
No. Show it.
That as a precipitating incident, and whether he was actually headed to the Obama house.
Yeah. Well, look at this. Rachel Maddow's little sister, Chris Hayes, actually asking a journalistic question. Hey, why are you making that claim? Do you have any evidence for that claim? That's a shocker. Never in my life would I ever thought that Chris Hayes would ask for evidence of a mainstream news media pundit's claim.
So his Truth Social account, which has now been taken down, directly reposted Donald Trump's Truth, I guess, post that had that address in it, and he reposted it and said Gotham surrounded. On his Telegram account, he also posted that address, and then sort of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole where he'll just post stuff that he finds online. So he'll search around everything he could find about this, and then there was something he found something about tunnels being around. I guess he thought that the Podestas lived around there and thought that there were underground tunnels. So he's live streaming himself now, and this video has been reposted as well, where he's just going around the forest around the Obama's home and looking for tunnels, and he finds a backpack. Apparently a backpack had been abandoned back there a while back, and what's this? He sorts through it, and then he says, they're coming at one point, and then the live stream sort of cuts out. So this is someone who just really a troubled individual. I think that clearly has some deeper issues going on here.
Yeah, Ryan Riley, as always, thanks for
thanks for that stunning insight. So what? I'm looking for other news articles here, so I'm trying to see what this was. So on Thursday, after former President Donald Trump posted screenshots that featured a purported address for Obama's home, but no one's providing any of these materials in their articles. Shocker. So what? What was it? Was it an aerial photo of DC? It's so fucking stupid. So stupid. Oh man, we might need another. Let me check my subscriptions real quick. See if we got anything that came in. Okay, I think we're ready for the next one here. Oh yeah, here we go. I almost forgot. We have 2 Alumo style segments. 2.
Thank you.
And joining me now to continue the important conversation on affirmative action is Ellie Ying Mistal, justice correspondent at The Nation, host of the new podcast, Contempt of Court, and author of Allow Me to Retort, a Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution. Ellie, my friend, in response to Chief Justice John Roberts' majority opinion, you wrote in The Nation, quote, his opinion attempts to capture the 14th Amendment and redeploy it to justify a white version of colorblindness that just so happens to lock in a status quo that benefits whites. Why is the majority's invocation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause such an insult here?
Yeah, because the 14th Amendment passed after the Civil War, after we fought a whole war to try to end slavery in this country, was not passed so varsity blues white kids could get into college. That wasn't the point of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was passed explicitly to redress racial strife in the past. In fact, the authors of the 14th Amendment, and legal nerds will note that I am making an originalist argument right now. The authors of the 14th Amendment passed the 14th Amendment specifically so they could do things like pass the 1866 Civil Rights Act, the Ku Klux Klan Act, as it was known. They weren't sure they had constitutional authorization to pass Civil Rights Act, which included policies like affirmative action during Reconstruction. They weren't sure they had the constitutional authority to pass those acts without ratification of the 14th Amendment. So the idea that the 14th Amendment can now be weaponized against the very people it was designed to help is an anathema to me, and one of the many problems with John Roberts' majority opinion.
But Ellie, Justice Roberts also writes, quote, nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise. But let's speak frankly, as we always do. Doesn't this still allow for race to be a factor in the admissions process?
Yeah, it does. All it does is that you went too far. You're penalizing Asians. Shouldn't you dislike that part of this thing? The same thing with the abortion issue. They wanted to change things up to the moment or after of birth. Well, you went too far. We got to take the whole thing back, and you got to have to make your case again.
Well, see, here's the thing. Roberts is saying that you can still consider diversity, but he's also taking away the tools that universities use
to penalize people and to exclude people. That's the problem. It's not the inclusion part. It's the exclusion part.
To consider diversity. And that's not just me saying that. That is the opinion of multiple people who work at universities where affirmative action has already been taken away, right? In states that have already banned affirmative action, like California and Michigan. University officials submitted briefs to the court saying, this is what we need, that we've tried to do it without affirmative action and doesn't work the same way. So Roberts is essentially saying, yeah, you can still drink. I'm just going to take away all the water. Good luck. Like it's a part of the insult of his decision. He's trying to do it to, for press basically, but on the ground, he's taken away the practical tool. And I just also want to say one thing, Katie, the idea that now as a black student, you've got to waste time in your word limited college essay explaining to admissions counselors how racism works in the country, because John Roberts says that's now just part of your job, is, again, insulting. Black kids across the country got other things they want to talk about in their college essays other than explaining to admissions counselors how racism worked in their life.
Ellie, we got to talk about Ed Bloom, who helped bring this lawsuit by Students for Fair Admissions. And he's a white guy, for people who didn't know this. Why is it so important for Ed Bloom to get a group of AAPI students to serve as the plaintiffs in these two lawsuits?
Because when you let white supremacists co-opt your argument,
sure,
you lose. Look, I have written that I think Harvard discriminates in certain ways against the AAPI community. if you just look at the facts of the case, and one of the ways that we saw was that Harvard uses something called a personal rating, which is like a amalgam of guidance counselors and teacher recommendations letters. And AAPI students score lower on that personal rating for some reason, probably a racist reason, right? But the Supreme Court didn't take away the personal rating. Harvard can still use the personal rating, which was factually shown to discriminate against AAPI students. Another way that they're discriminated against, colleges do geographical sorting, right? Like they want 18 kids from San Francisco and 5 kids from Iowa. Well, that might sound fair, but if you're an AAPI student, you're most likely living in San Francisco, right? AAPI kids are clustered on the coasts of this country.
If there was a kid living in San Francisco, their parents are rich enough that this shouldn't matter. Considering the real estate rates of what it costs to live inside of San Francisco.
When you have 18 kids slots from San Francisco, you're putting a lot of Asian Americans fighting with each other for like 2 nuts, right?
What are they doing? They're fighting with each other?
Are clustered on the coasts of this country. When you have 18 kids slots from San Francisco, you're putting a lot of
Look at this hand movement here. He's competing with Ari here.
Asian Americans fighting.
There you go. There's a screenshot. Hang on. Let me see if we can get this one. All right, we got it.
With each other for like 2 nuts, right? You go out to Iowa, that's going to disproportionately favor white kids. You put in 5 kids from Montana, that's going to disproportionately favor white kids. But the Supreme Court didn't ban geographic sorting in college admissions, did it? No.
Is that race-based? No, it's not. It just happens to be that there's different demographics within the geographic makeup, but you're still not excluding them or penalizing, in this case, Asian students for for where they live. It didn't matter. You just were Asian. That is the part that went too far.
Only banned race consciousness in college admissions. The one thing that the trial court, the finder of fact in our legal institutions, said was not hurting AAPI students. And that's the problem with letting white people like Ed Blum take over your arguments. You'll lose. The thing that actually...
See, the problem that you have here is you keep referring to people as white people, Asian people, black people. I just see Americans. I don't know about you. That's what I see. And when you start trying to categorize it, then this is where you lead to problems. And ultimately, racism. You are... racist. You are. You know you are, because I've seen the way you belittle and just completely condemn white people as a whole for everything. Everything is the white man's fault.
You could have won, you lost, and instead you ended up with a decision that's only going to help the mediocre white kids that Ed Blum's been trying to help his entire career.
Yeah, and you're also doing the model minority myth wedge of using the AAPI community to try to divide and conquer the minority groups that exist in our
Divide and conquer.
Our community of colors. Ellie Ying, Mistal.
Community of colors, yes. Okay. So anyway, look. All right. So they're fundamentally, I think I messed this up on Deportable Discussions the other day. I think I was saying that the problems are downstream. I think I meant to say the problems are upstream. I think I may have misspoke. So they're trying to use that as a fix for things that they need to fix, upstream. If you're saying that there's a disparity problem, there's a problem of disparity and equity, as they said, or as they say. Where does that start? So look at the genesis of what you're thinking is the problem to solve it, right? So let's see. Was this the same decision? I'm trying to see if there's one more, I think, of Ellie, but let's see. Okay. So this is the student loan one.
Thank you both for being here. And Ellie, I begged you to come back. I know you worked yesterday and were on our A block yesterday, but I wanted to hear more from you. So thank you for coming back for a second round of this. My unified theory of the court is that essentially they only believe 2 classes of people deserve the protections of the Constitution: white, conservative Christians, and billionaires. Disabuse me of this notion if you can.
No, I mean, I would add, open bigots. They think that those people should have rights too. But other than those three categories, that's pretty much it. And you see it in today's entirely politicized decisions. I think you've done a good job of explaining kind of the 30,000 foot level hypocrisy of these cases. But when you get into the weeds, they just get worse, right? This is a court that claims to be originalist, that claims to be textualist, right? In the HEROES Act, the act that Biden used to have the student debt relief program, they say the HEROES Act says explicitly that the Secretary of Education can waive or modify student debt, which is what Biden did. But Roberts basically says, no, not that way, and completely overturns the Biden policy. The other hypocrisy that you really see is that if you look at Roberts's other huge national emergency executive power decision, that's the Muslim ban, folks. That's Trump v. Hawaii. And what did Roberts say there?
Well, it wasn't a Muslim ban.
Oh, if the president wants to ban people based on their religion.
That's not what this was about. This was about a terroristic threat at the time. It had nothing to do with religion. You're, again, bringing in something and making that all about that something that has nothing to do with the motivations of whatever action that the court is voting against.
That's okay. But if the president wants to help people and give them $10,000, that's not okay. So that really, I think...
Filter Dog 1 says he missed something. He missed cilantro at the grocery store. Now here's going to be your conundrum. Is the 40 or 50 cents that the cilantro costs worth the amount of gas that it takes to go back to the store? but at the same time, it will make whatever you're making with it because it's a crucial ingredient. Didn't you say you were marinating some carne asada? Yeah, you might. Well, you said it was. You're marinating it now, so you're not cooking it now. So at least you have some time to get it. So.
Highlights what you're talking about, Joy, that their decisions are not motivated by law or facts or logic or reason.
Oh, what if it's not law, facts, or reason, then how were these things ruled on, Ellie?
They're motivated based on who wins.
Oh, okay.
And as long as the rich people and the bigots are winning, then that's the way the court's going to go.
You know, and just to stay with you just for a moment, Ellie, I mean, again, read through, it's very lengthy. They write a lot of words to say not a lot of legal theory, right? To just say, we want this result, we're getting there, and here's the way we're going to get there. In Clarence Thomas's concurrence.
Oh, wait a minute. Was it Timberjet? Were you the one marinating the carne asada? All right, now I really want carne asada all of a sudden.
In the affirmative action decision. First of all, he cites Plessy a lot. And I thought Plessy was like verboten, like nobody wants to talk about Plessy versus Ferguson. He sure does. And in one point, make this make sense for me, please. You're a lawyer. In his concurrence, he claims that the Freedmen's Bureau Act, which created the Freedmen's Bureau, that was supposed to rematriculate former enslaved people, all of whom, 100% of whom were black, back into society. He said, oh, that was a colorblind statute. How can the Freedmen's Bureau, Ellie Mistal, be a colorblind statute? Make that make sense.
It's colorblind if you're like Clarence Thomas and your whole ideological perspective involves gouging out your own eyes. Like that, and that's what Thomas is. Like, he is such a mutilated version of a black justice that he is able to make these proclamations that just fly in the face of law and facts, right? One of the other things that you really realize when you read through his concurrence is just how angry he is at Ketanji Brown Jackson for having the temerity to be another black person on the Supreme Court. He apparently thought that he got to be the only one. He thought that he had pulled up the ladder for everybody else, right? And so he's really like, he basically throws a tantrum at Jackson. And why? Because Jackson is making the actual originalist argument in the affirmative action case. She is the one pointing out that the 14th Amendment was done explicitly for racial restorative policies like affirmative action, which, as I said yesterday, the first time that happened in this country was during Reconstruction. So this is the history that Clarence Thomas ignores, and that's why he's so fabulous about all of the stuff that's in his concurrence. He's just like plucked out his own eyes, and he doesn't want to see anything that Miss Jenny tells him he shouldn't be able to see. That's where he is in his headspace right now.
Let me bring you in, Christina, because it.
So yeah, there you go. Some. I don't know what you want to call that ridiculousness. Thank you to Tracy S. over there on the foxhole with the message here with the cookie. The message, apparently Ellie's dad was the first African American in Suffolk County legislature, was dismissed for violating residency laws. So a little bit of history over Ellie's past. Let's see. I think I also had a Patriot spirit with the cookie with the message. He looks like an a-hole trying to appropriate Colonel Sanders and getting it wrong. He's definitely a bombastic character, I'll tell you that. I mean, all right. So I guess they have one more topic. Let's see what the topic is that they're going to talk about.
It is very mind-blowing.
It looks like they're going to bring up something of a post. So let's see what the post is.
But let's talk about the cases that came down today, because we kind of all had this feeling, I think all of us did that are on this panel, that they were doing like the one case where they weren't going to literally throw out elections entirely and say that states could just decide who the electors were. That was sort of like the kind of dodge.
Yeah, states, you can't decide your own electors.
To make you not, remember what they were going to do next. And now they did what we expected them to do. But the way that the right is spinning it is they're doing the usual thing of saying, no, these guys just believe in what MLK said. They believe in Dr. King. Here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. As Martin Luther King said, people should be judged on the content and character. And they always...
Blah, 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 blah. The one thing that, that is very universal among all races, that we should all look at each other's character. She just didn't want to read the rest of it because she doesn't actually believe in it. That's why she's not reading it.
Always say the same thing. This is what MLK actually wrote about affirmative action. I feel this is an important education for those who hear Dr. King misquoted. The vast majority of civil rights leaders, this is the quote, favored affirmative action. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for him. But his goals went beyond that. His policy goals were to not just alter the racial composition of the elite, but also change everything about the economy in ways that today Republicans would call socialist. Your thoughts on this misuse of Dr. King to explain what's being done to people of color and other minorities?
Yeah, Joy, it's also exhausting. I'm leaning on my grandmother's adage of the only time you should be surprised is when you're surprised. We've seen time and time again Republicans and conservatives constantly cherry pick the words of Dr. King to hide behind their own racism and white supremacy.
Yeah, so when we bring out his most famous quote, we're just doing it because it's like when you say, "Oh yeah, I know one black person." Is that what you're trying to say? Because there's only the one quote that's really famous, but actually very apropos for what's going on in society at large and to how to heal the grievances. Rightly so. I mean, that was a very tumultuous time in history. Although I think it's exaggerated as far as the amount of people, because it was only very rich and mostly Democrats Dixiecrats that owned and had plantations. So it's not like every white person previously just had their own plantation. This is not how that worked. So. Anyway, let's see.
So
Continue.
yes, this content of their character, I don't want to judge someone by their skin color. Mm-hmm. Republicans pull that out every single time they systematically take away people's rights. And it's like, well, Dr. King wouldn't have wanted it. It's like, well, first things first, Dr. King was assassinated. And when he was assassinated.
Hey, which organization assassinated Martin Luther King and that you glorify currently? You want to take a guess? It has 3 letters on it. There's 3 letters. That's this one right here. Anyone want a cheat sheet?
He was known as a domestic terrorist, essentially, in your eyes. So let's not hide behind a few sentences that you all want to use every time you take away rights and freedoms from the vast majority of Americans, specifically and explicitly Black Americans. So no one has read the length of Dr. King's speeches on the right. No one has really dissected what he said, because if they did, they'd read that full quote that you just read and know that their cherry-picked quote doesn't hold up.
And very quickly, and I'm going to let both of you comment on this, but I'm going to start with you, Christina. What the Supreme Court has essentially said is that the only group that cannot be discriminated against or even perceive itself to be discriminated against are white people. But you can discriminate against gay people as long as you say that you're an artist and you're sensitive about your art. You know, if you say I'm an artist, but that opens a lot of doors. So what they're saying is that the only protected class are white people who want to get into Harvard and rich people. But you can discriminate against everyone else. Native Americans who want water, people who have facing the death penalty. Everybody else is fair game. Make that make sense.
It does make sense, Joy, but it brings up a much larger question: is can anyone ever be a full citizen in this country if they're not white men specifically? And as Black people really question.
So you don't believe that you can do? Why? Your first response is no. Okay, why? It's just so stupid. I mean, it. People who see inequality in everything, it's just like, I guess what the other response is. I can't pretend to understand where they're coming from. Sure, fine, okay, but I sure as shit know that continuing this path is not healthy, not productive. I know that. So anyway, let's see. So now let's get into the last kind of story or set of stories here. So we're going to look at what's going on with this. They're saying people are flipping on Trump for going in for this. What do they call it with Rudy? Their term is going to come up, so we'll just let them bring it up. The king for a day immunity type deal. All right, so let's see what they're saying.
Special Counsel Jack Smith seems...
let's see. I think it'll lens over there on the foxhole with the cookie, and Patriot Spirit with the cookie. The message: they're on their own island of rejected pundits. Usually only listen, regret looking at my screen. So you're usually an audio only person. Patriot Spirit, yeah. Well, there you go. Okay, Ari, there you go.
Seems to be good at his job, or should we say jobs, as he oversees the documents probe of Donald Trump, where there's now an indictment and a trial coming, and this coup probe of January 6, where allies are apparently flipping. Take this former Trump campaign official named Mike Roman. He is, quote, cooperating with prosecutors from Jack Smith's team, according to a CNN report. All of this is part of the broader probe, not only into the Jan 6th insurrection, but the wider efforts to overthrow democracy and Trump's loss. This article, this report I just mentioned, says Roman's cooperation is part of a, quote, proffer agreement. That's the same type of deal we recently told you about, and Smith's team can then get information. He won't use it against that individual. And we know he's done that with this guy and with Giuliani. Now, this guy, Roman, was a key player in that elector plot that I've told you so much about. And
right, but you haven't told people that it's not illegal.
Indeed, when we first started reporting on it, people said, well, what does this matter? Or if it didn't really happen, well, an incomplete or ineffective or failed effort to stage a coup is still a huge deal.
There you go. The objection to the certification of the electoral count of these votes is now a coup. So any effort to do something which is not illegal apparently is its own conspiracy or process crime. This is like the same thing as they're trying to make an obstruction case out of this. Really, it should fall apart, and I really hope it does. And I'm gonna love the day that all this shit just falls apart for them.
That's why there's attempted murder. It's different than murder, but it's a big deal. And we also know
it was attempted murder of our democracy
from reporting that has been done in the print outlets, the Jan 6 committee's work, our own interviews and reporting here on The Beat, and Rachel Maddow's reporting. Take it all together, and we actually have a pretty good idea about who was working on this plot that I've told you has legal exposure if you commit fraud in front of the government. We know that it involved Giuliani, who I just mentioned.
Yeah, so Thumper Rose brings up a good point. They all objected in 2016. As a matter of fact, there was a widespread media and Hollywood, entertainment class that all said, hey, we need some alternative slate of electors. We need you electors to not vote for Trump. We need you to vote for Hillary. We need you to object to the certification of these electoral counts on January 6th of 2017. They made all of those comments, all of that same thing. I don't know if they actually attempted any alternative slate of electors. Wouldn't surprise me if they did. And there's been keeping hush about that.
Is now also doing a proffer. Boris Epshteyn, who is overseeing the lawyers defending Donald Trump right now, and Jenna Ellis, who detailed part of the plot to me right here on The Beat.
That was part of the process to make sure there were alternate electors for when, as we hoped, the challenges to the seated electors would be heard and would be successful per the 12th Amendment of the Constitution and the Electoral Count Act.
The election was stolen and President Trump won by a landslide. And how you're mischaracterizing this, I think that your viewers need to understand the truth of this.
Everything that was done illegally by the Trump legal team, according to the rules and under the leadership of Rudy Giuliani.
That's just some of what we gathered from people at the time. And only they know why and how they spoke out. Epshteyn, for example, was trying to put his best defense forward, arguing that this was a constitutional process. Well, right now it's under criminal investigation, and some of his colleagues, potentially co-conspirators, are talking because there is a chance that it's not viewed as constitutional, that it's viewed as part of a crime. And we know when Roman was questioned by the Congressional Committee on this, specifically about the electors plot, he repeatedly pled the Fifth. And that matters because this is an individual who, faced with the opportunity to clear this up and just explain, hey, here's what we did, or here's why we knew it was legal, or here's why it's no big deal. That's something you could use your testimony to do. Instead, he said something very different. He said he was worried if he answered truthfully, he would incriminate himself in crimes. And that's why he pled the Fifth.
Yeah, well, you guys railroad people all the time, so I'm not surprised that in a hearing like this, someone would say, nope, I'm not going to answer your questions. Nope. Of course. They railroad people all the time. Flynn is a good example. Trump is a good example. And what you're doing to this guy, another good example.
Did you discuss the alternate electors plan with President Trump, either before or after the electors met and cast votes on December 14th, 2020?
The 5th.
And in this email, Mr. Finley wrote, Rudy's team has designated Ken Chesbrough as the point person for the legal documents and Mike Roman as the lead for executing the voting on Monday. Is it accurate that Mr. Giuliani designated you as the lead for executing the voting by alternate electors in advance of December 14th and the meeting of the Electoral College?
The 5th.
The 5th. Specifically on the truth of whatever happened related to those plots.
They were asking him to just basically say yes on the stuff that they had in front of him. So there wasn't a hiding anything there.
Now, Roger Stone and Paul Manafort had a different strategy. They worked for Trump. They stonewalled the person who used to have this special counsel job in a different fact pattern. That was Bob Mueller. Ultimately, they faced accusations of lying to Mueller's investigators, and then they got pardons from Trump.
So you're saying that there was a reason for this guy to assume that they could find anything whatsoever to go after him, and he decided just to not talk to them? Yeah, okay.
Take former Trump CFO Alan Weisselberg, who went to jail rather than fully flip on Trump. So we know that many people, for whatever the reasons, have gone to great lengths not to flip on Donald Trump. But now Jack Smith is making progress with this gentleman I told you about and with Giuliani, and getting them to at least start the process of saying the things that they wouldn't say elsewhere, things that they previously said were covered by the Fifth Amendment. And that raises the question.
No. They invoked their privilege for that. It didn't say that what they were doing was covered by the Fifth Amendment.
Of one, whether they will ultimately provide the kind of material that Smith can use against other people involved in these alleged potential crimes, or even Trump himself. And two, whether there are more indictments coming. And we have a top national security lawyer from basically not only Washington, D.C., but around the country in terms of his expertise. You may have heard of him, Bradley Moss. Bradley, I want to ask you exactly where this is headed. We're back together in just 60 seconds. We're back with national security lawyer Bradley Moss. Take it away. What does it mean that Smith is getting some of this information?
No, this is huge for that January 6th investigation that Jack Smith's running because it gets him into the inner circle. We know he's already talked to multiple lawyers that were both in the White House and in the post-White House campaign to get some context as to what was going on. But with someone like Mr. Roman, it's that lead-up. It's that period of time between December 14th, when the Electoral College votes were certified, and January 6th, that very critical period of time where there was no longer any basis for alternate electors. The precedent.
Yes, there was, because they still had court cases, and there was still a thing with the Supreme Court, if I recall.
From 1960 was no longer valid, and yet this campaign was still trying to get these slates submitted to NAR. They were trying to get them submitted to Vice President Pence on January 6th, the Eastman plan. This gives them more detailed insider knowledge. Whether or not it results in indictments, well, we're just going to all have to wait on that one.
And we showed viewers some of the history, including some of the...
I really hate that guy. I do. I absolutely hate that guy. He's just, there's something about it. It's like what's the other guy? Will Sommer. Just freaking. There's something about their fucking faces. I just dislike them. The way that they're so fucking smug. It's just, I just don't like them.
Public statements by people involved in this. As an attorney, what is your assessment of those stated defenses that we heard, some of which were kind of offered before they knew how much heat there would come from Special Counsel Smith?
I think a lot of those are more political talking points than actual true legal defenses. But look, if there are indictments, if the lawyers get indicted, the Rudy Giuliani's and the Sidney Powell's and the Jeff Clarks of the world, if some of the political players get indicted, and of course, if Donald Trump himself gets indicted, there's going to be extensive pretrial motions, an extensive array of challenges as a matter of law to these allegations and to whatever the charges are that are arrayed against them. I fully expect those things will get appealed up. I fully expect all of that will partially be the reason why I don't ever expect that kind of thing to get to trial before November 2024. But those defenses, in my view, far more, just like in the documents case, they're more political talking points masquerading as legal defenses.
Yeah, and Mike Roman is not a household name. It's certainly different than Giuliani, but we have a little bit more of the text here on that deposition from the committee probe where they said, did you ever talk to the president about other options for changing or affecting the results of the 2020 election? And he says the fifth.
Oh my gosh, that means that they did talk about that kind of stuff, even though he spent his entire interview just saying the fifth. So let's see what speculation they have for this.
Why does that matter? Because in the abundance of fairness, I have mentioned and reported that there are plenty of legal conversations you could have about trying to see whether you'd get a different outcome. Viewers remember many state races that have had recounts. Lawsuits, of course, are legal to file. Indeed, even filing a frivolous lawsuit, which can lead to sanction, is not a crime. In other words, if you and I don't practice anymore, but if you or I were practicing and somebody said, I want to file this, and we warned them, this might really be actually verging on frivolous, and they said file it anyway, we could debate that out. But if you file that, it's not a crime. When this individual says to Congress, well, if I answer this honestly, I might incriminate myself in a crime. What does that tell you?
That they're railroading everyone that they could find, and this guy just pled the fifth for everything. So if he went in there and he was answering questions and he was answering things, and all of a sudden on this question he says, I'm going to plead the fifth, then you might have something. But when you have someone constantly pleading over and over, but of course this is using logic, but of course they're not using logic over here.
So honestly, when it came to that, to the congressional probe, I think that was just overprotective lawyering. I'm pretty sure his lawyer said, you're invoking the fifth to everything. You're not answering questions on
Wow, an actual surprisingly honest answer from this asshole.
On anything doesn't mean that he actually has something there of value. That's why hearing about these proffer sessions, both what Rudy Giuliani did and what Mr. Roman did, that's where it's getting interesting of what do they actually have of value, of relevant material information that they can give to Jack Smith that would be informative to any issue of a potential indictment that they could barter with in order to avoid or at least minimize their own criminal exposure. That's something I expect we'll see and we'll get more clarity on if there are indictments.
Yeah.
You know, won't know before that.
Yeah. And before I lose you on the documents probe, long-time, really studious beat viewers may remember we quoted you in a separate piece the other day. We didn't have you on television, but we quoted you for the proposition that if people plead out and have government experience in these classified docs cases, they can sometimes avoid prison time. But if they don't, if they fight it all the way, which Trump's lawyers have said he intends to do, and they're convicted, that tends to then lead to prison time. Could you walk us through that precedent?
Sure. There are, examples of people who've gotten caught up in mishandling of classified information cases. You think of General Petraeus, who got off of basically a slap on the wrist, despite what I thought should have been a far more severe punishment, but who got away with not having significant exposure and didn't have to go to prison. To my knowledge, anyone who's ever taken this all the way, gone to trial and been convicted, it didn't matter how few or how many documents, it didn't matter how many mitigating circumstances there were at sentencing, there was always some kind of prison time. Even with people who pled guilty, you think a Reality Winner, she went to prison for several years for the one document. So if Donald Trump actually ends up in trial over the documents case, and if he gets convicted, I don't see any way he avoids prison time. His only hope in that case is he can get reelected to the presidency, or someone of his party can get elected and pardon him.
Would you, and now I'm running over on time, but would you advise, you've dealt with these cases, would you advise a client in his situation to plead?
Anyone else, I'd say you've got to plead. Anyone else. For him, that's just not an option. That's a political issue.
Right. There's too many other things that go into it. But as you say, it's interesting to see that option technically is right actually out there in front of him. And we reported on some of his earlier lawyers in the Florida case who tried to give him a version of that option, either more full cooperation when he had the chance.
They were cooperating.
Or even a cooperation agreement that would lead to some sort of armistice, if you will, with the...
They were already in talks with that.
DOJ. He clearly did not follow that advice then. Bradley Moss, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, shocker, the FBI was not honest with Trump. Crazy how that works. All right. I think we got two more here. Let's see. Think of the Timberjet over there with the can on the foxhole with the message here. If it weren't for this show, I would be doing something productive. LOL. Well, I have plans to clean out the garage later. I'm going to try to do something productive there. But I don't know. Maybe take a cue from everybody else. What do they say? Oh, I lost my train of thought. Thank you, Timberjet. Appreciate that. I don't know. Is it dry enough for you to mow your lawn or something? You could listen while you're doing that. I don't know, or something. But otherwise, I appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Able to gather so much information about how Trump handled classified information at Mar-a-Lago. So flipping NADA would be a big deal. Ooh, besides, you can never be too careful since others apparently already have made the switch. CNN reported last night that a former Trump campaign official named Mike Roman, the same guy who tried to physically deliver fake certificates of electors to former Vice President Mike Pence ahead of January 6th, that guy, you see there, is now collaborating with the special counsel's team in its other ongoing criminal probe, the one related to the 2020 election. And according to CNN, Roman...
So once again, they're putting these people out publicly and trying to put pressure on them and trying to get them to flip. This is what's going on. This is a mainstream news media pressure campaign.
Entered what is known as a proffer agreement, a sort of legal contract in which defendants basically agree to provide prosecutors with useful information if the statements made are not then used against them in future criminal proceedings. And that's not all. We actually learned this week that Rudy Giuliani, the person that spearheaded Trump's bogus claims of election fraud in court, has been interviewed by the special counsel's team. A Giuliani aide told CNN the interview was, quote, voluntary. Giuliani, if you remember, is also a target in DA Fani Willis's investigation in Georgia, which is a probe looking into a separate effort to overturn the results from the 2020 election in that state. Now, whether Trump himself is also a target, we honestly don't know for sure. But today, the former president confirmed he thinks he is a target of Willis's investigation. He also predicted somehow that the charges against him in Georgia will be dropped.
Yeah, I think that they should if they were to be brought.
Don't ask us how, why he made that statement. Joining me now is Tali Farhadian Weinstein. She is a former federal prosecutor and state prosecutor. She's also an MSNBC legal analyst. Talia, it's great to see you again.
I think it's the second time we've seen this one.
Thank you for being here tonight. So let me ask you about
on this show too. So she was on this show with Alex Wagner. That's whose show he's sitting in on. So I think we saw her 2 weeks ago.
January 6th. I mean, we know that Rudy Giuliani was interviewed by the special counsel. We now know that Mark Roman, who played a key role in the fake electoral plot as well, is cooperating in this agreement. What does that signal to you at this moment in the investigation?
Well, it tells us that Jack Smith is really busy because at the same time that he's going full speed ahead in the documents case, he's also working up the January 6th case. And the Giuliani appearance in a proffer is interesting. We don't know what it means, but we could make some educated guesses. And remember, Giuliani was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. So he knows better than anybody what to do and how to help himself. And one possibility is that he is working his way toward a cooperation agreement.
Such bullshit. Your assumption assumes what well, I just used the same word, right? Your assumption includes your opinion that something was done wrong or that he was somehow making false statements, but the affidavits and all that kind of stuff about what was going on the ground is still going to have to be addressed. And I don't think they really want to address that, but we'll see. They're trying to say, I think that you want to expose election fraud, do this whole RICO thing and see how that works out for you.
Because when you decide to make an agreement as the government with somebody where they would plead guilty to whatever crimes they've committed in exchange for leniency, you have to have a series of proffers along the way in which that person tells you everything they've ever done that was wrong, and you decide if you believe them and if you want to work with them. And so that's one possibility for what's going on here.
Okay, so you bring up a really interesting point about Rudy Giuliani wanting to tell us everything that he's doing. Let's put up this tweet. He retweeted this CNN article that basically talks about him going to meet with the special prosecutor. It's an article that basically confirmed that he was interviewed, and voluntarily nonetheless. What do you think he's trying to tell us with the fact that he retweeted that article?
That it was voluntary? I don't know.
So that was curious, right?
Yeah.
And he definitely has some kind of PR.
Is that his way of like, I'm afraid to tell Donald Trump that I did this, but hopefully he'll see it on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, to go inside of his mind is
I would never ask you to do that, right?
Is tricky. But he does seem to want to emphasize, one, that his appearance at the proffer sessions was voluntary, which actually doesn't really tell us very much because proffers are by definition voluntary. It just means that you have volunteered to meet with prosecutors outside of the grand jury without a subpoena and tell them what you know, hope you get something out of it, or just do the right thing. And he also wanted to put out there that he...
Well, that's the thing. Did it come from Jack Smith? So maybe he wasn't subpoenaed, but maybe he was offered this thing as opposed to a subpoena, and Rudy's like, okay, fine, we'll just get it over with. Well, yeah, we don't know what his motivation was.
He has not been told that he is a subject of the investigation, which is hard to believe because subject is really broadly defined. Right. It just means that your conduct is in the scope of what they're looking at. So I think that's actually kind of a clever thing on his part because what he said is he wasn't told he was a subject. Well, if you don't ask, then you aren't told. It doesn't mean you are not a subject. And that's actually kind of a common thing that defendants do when they kind of want to manage the optics of what they're doing.
Let me ask you about this reporting yesterday from the New York Times that a grand jury in Miami basically, has received a fresh batch of subpoenas in the Mar-a-Lago investigation. How do you read that? What does that tell us?
So it just tells me that they're continuing to investigate. And in the federal system, it's actually really easy to supersede an indictment. So to add new charges or to add new defendants or to add both. You know, when I think of any serious case that I brought, I can't think of a time where I didn't supersede the indictment. In some way, you learn new things, you keep going, there's an obligation to keep going. it's important that it's happening in Miami. So this doesn't mean that there's
New Jersey, for example.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not.
How would that be different if something was happening in New Jersey?
Well, if they were looking at the conduct around that tape of Donald Trump waving the document around, then they would probably have to venue that, locate that case in Bedminster in New Jersey. And so this tells me that they're still working on potential crimes that happened around Mar-a-Lago.
A lot of developments. We'll see what happens. It was kind of like pushed aside a little bit with everything coming out of the Supreme Court, but nonetheless, it's going to be important.
A lot of law news today.
A lot of law news. We're grateful for your expertise, Talia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, so what are they going to do? They're going to do if the patterning holds out, it's possible that they're going to say the whole flooding of that server room somehow means something. That's what but we'll have to see. If they keep pushing on, if they mention that one more time, then I'm going to say, yeah, they're going to try to say something about that. Or they're going to, well, because didn't they say that it was like Walt Nauta was the one that was like in charge of that? I don't know. We'll see.
A lot has happened this week as the criminal cases against Donald Trump continue to develop. By now, you've probably heard the damning tape of Trump discussing classified material at his residence in Bedminster, New Jersey.
These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is...
I'm pretty sure that's Elena Haba that I'm hearing in the background, kind of sniffering, like snickering and kind of under her breath, like, I don't know, maybe we can declassify. I don't know. But I don't know if there's. Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what.
Yeah, now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. It's so cool. I mean, it's so. Here and I have. And you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
it's incredible, right?
No,
hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
But that is.
Yeah, that's the first time we've seen that one. Did you see that? They never met a war they didn't want.
Hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
But that isn't the only time that prosecutors allege Trump discussed classified information with unqualified people without the proper security clearances. Jack Smith's indictment describes another similar instance in Bedminster where Mr. Trump showed a classified map to someone without proper security clearance. That person turned out to be Susie Wiles, one of the top advisors to Trump's presidential campaign. And new reporting from CNN suggests that Susie Wiles has already talked with investigators multiple times. Special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents has already led to criminal charges against the former president, but it appears the investigators are still investigating. According to reporting from the New York Times, the federal grand jury in Miami is continuing to look into different pieces of the case. In just the last few days, they've issued new subpoenas to several individuals connected to the inquiry. And that's not all. The special counsel's other probe, the one looking into overturning the 2020 election, is also moving right along. Last week, the New York Times reported that a former Trump campaign official named Mike Roman, who tried to hand-deliver fake elector votes to then Vice President Mike Pence, was cooperating with investigators. Well, according to new reporting from CNN, that guy is now working with investigators after he entered what's called a proffer agreement, basically a legal arrangement in which defendants will provide investigators with relevant information and it can't be held against them. We also learned this week that Rudy Giuliani, who was behind Trump's fake election fraud claims, has also entered a proffer agreement and has been interviewed by the special counsel's team. Joining me now is Elise Adamson. She's a former assistant U.S. attorney in that role. She arraigned some of the first defendants arrested in the January 6th Capitol riot. She is now a principal at the Beveridge and Diamond law firm. Sorry about that. Hey, Elise, welcome to you. So what do you make of the Miami grand jury issuing more subpoenas and continuing its investigation even after the indictment was made public? Is that typical, and what does it say?
Well, first and foremost, Michael, thank you so much for having me on. Is it typical to continue an investigation after an indictment? I wouldn't say it's typical, but I would say it's not uncommon. A lot of times there will be evidence that is found after an indictment is issued such that investigators want to continue to dig in and bring potential charges. Now, in secret proceedings, in cases that are truly not public, investigators don't typically want to do that because once an indictment is made public, it puts the defendants and everyone else involved on notice that they're investigating. But here, we don't have any of those issues. This was a very public investigation. And so it is very reasonable that they would continue on after receiving more information. And so what is likely going to happen is Jack Smith will continue to put people in the grand jury, and they can add additional charges and also potentially additional defendants. It's notable that only one other individual was charged. We had to make it a conspiracy. It has to be two individuals. And so they initially charged Walt Nauta, but there's also a lot of people named in that indictment, unnamed in that indictment, that ultimately could be held liable for their conduct. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something called a superseding indictment kind of supplementing the one that has already been issued with additional counts and individuals as defendants.
So just to clarify for everyone, what you're saying is that could then likely lead to additional charges coming out of what this additional investigation may or may not find.
That's correct. So it would be additional charges arising out of the same investigation. And look, it doesn't necessarily need to be coming to the same indictment. We now have more information about what was happening at Bedminster, and we know we have a witness in Susie Wiles. And so ultimately, it may not even be the same indictment. As we saw early on in this initial documents probe, folks were put in front of the grand jury in D.C., and then the venue was changed to Miami. So it is very possible that Jack Smith is putting additional folks in a Miami grand jury, but ultimately might bring this case in New Jersey, which would be the proper place to bring it, the proper venue for the other classified documents, such as you said in the lead up with the classified map. That would be the appropriate venue to ultimately charge him.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Susie Wiles. What does her being identified at this point in this federal indictment say about where the trajectory of this investigation is going? And
that you're desperate, and now you have to try to smear the people that are around him, and you're trying to make this as sensational as possible.
How much?
To essentially intimidate other people that are also associated or affiliated with Trump.
Damage could she cause Trump in his defense?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it means it's ongoing. And again, other charges are imminent. It's very damaging. We heard...
So if she's a key witness in the fact that she saw him hold up classified information, you don't release her name to the public. So, but you do know that potentially she said, "Oh yeah, one time when I met Trump, he had." But again, we don't even know. No, they said it was about what, August or September. So they had July, then they had August, and then September. That's the way that works, typically. At least every year, and. So she says, "Oh yeah, we walked into a room. He said, 'Hey, don't get too close. I'm looking at this information over here that's probably not available. I shouldn't publicly disseminate.'" And that's what she said. And so somehow that became, now she's going to testify against him. What's she going to say? That's what he said, but how are you going to prove what he had?
Former President Trump say that he wasn't really showing classified documents. It was just bravado. These were just random papers he had. But now we have
Actually, they're more than likely they were newspaper articles that he was saying that this is classified information, meaning the attack on Iran was the classified information. The attack on Iran was the event that it had occurred that was the classified information that he's referring to. So as I've been reflecting on this over the past few days, I think that's most likely what it was. It still is those articles, but he's talking about this and that. This was classified information, meaning the plans. And then so when she says, "Hey, well, we could have declassified that," he's like, "No, we can't because I'm not currently president." And then they were saying, well, Hillary would. Then they joked that Hillary would just take that stuff and send it to Anthony Weiner, and so that's, I believe, what he's referring to. So there we go.
Witness who is likely going to say, no, that was a map. We have someone who is present that can refute Donald Trump's claims. And so I think that's very important because all we have right now is an audio recording. And so.
No, you don't. So she is confusing the Bedminster, the two different Bedminster claims. She's not the one that was in the room with the whole audio recording. So that tells me that you don't know what you're talking about.
These were just random papers he had. But now we have a witness who is likely going to say, no, that was a map. We have someone who is present that can refute Donald Trump's claims. And so I think that's very important because all we have right now is an audio recording. And so, yes, he's making statements that are important for his knowledge and intent that he was hanging on to classified documents, which is important for the ultimate charges in this matter. But to have a witness to say, yes, I actually saw classified documents, that can lay the foundation for those additional very serious charges.
I want to ask you, we've got about a minute left, about the January 6th investigation. You were present at the Capitol on January 6th as it was being stormed. And
I'm sorry, you were present at the Capitol when it was being stormed, and you arraigned people for being at the Capitol while it was stormed? Yeah, that's not hypocrisy at all.
And that case has quietly been progressing over the past few weeks and months, with the special counsel's office reaching partial immunity agreements with some of the fake electors in exchange for their testimony. Where do you assess that case at this moment, and what do you think comes out of it next?
I think this case is we're coming very close to an indictment. We now know that they're immunizing folks who were fake electors, which means that they have already zeroed in an illegal.
You don't know that. All you have is the fact that they agreed to be present at a proffer agreement.
Theory. And they are essentially letting these people walk off scot-free so they can generate enough evidence to charge this case.
Meaning that they don't have evidence and they're in pursuit of a crime, as opposed to a crime have been committed? Yeah. I
think this is a really significant turning point because this fake elector scheme is really the centerpiece, I believe, of an upcoming indictment. Of course, there are other charges related to the violent insurrection on the Capitol itself, but this whole national scheme to replace electors, Biden electors for Trump electors, is a very important feature of this potential indictment.
That wasn't the purpose of them. The purpose was for them to be used if and when potentially that court cases would go through, which went all the way through up until as far as I remember. I guess it would be good to know. Does anyone know when the last? So they always bring up the 61 court cases, that 60 of them were shot down on standing. Do we know when the last one was? If it was anywhere close to a day or two or three, or maybe 3 days, considering things would be shut down on New Year's Day when they would reopen. So if there's anything close to January 6th, the very end of December as well, before, because of all the holiday stuff, then things were still ongoing. And so it depends on the timeline. If these people were trying to, get these things made available to Pence, and there were still cases ongoing, there's no problem here. And there's not even a problem even if the cases had already been dismissed.
And now that we see so many people going into the grand jury in succession, and those that now cannot have charges brought against them, so they have a reason to be as forthcoming as possible, I think that we're going to be seeing an indictment shortly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Do we have... How long is this one? And it's about the same thing, and I don't really care what Glenn has to say. We'll save this one for tomorrow. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for today, guys. I'm getting pretty hungry and want to get something going. I'm going to grill some burgers or something. Dress up a cheeseburger or something like that on the grill. So anyway, that will do it for today, at least. I'll see what's on the agenda. We'll see if we have something tomorrow. Most likely, yeah, we should be good. Alrighty. Well, continue to have a great 4th of July weekend, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one. Let's see. Thank you to Timberjet with the can, with the message. Cheers. Cheers right back at you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. If we follow the timeline as they have been previously, they're trying to align this with just before Fani Willis. So they're saying that people are going in, they're doing, so my guess is you're going to see some stuff in July from Jack Smith. And then you're going to see Fani Willis drop all of her, or, drop her indictments. And then that would be it, right? Because that's the big ones as far as all the different cases. So what would they have if they did? So if they go, if Jack Smith in the first week of August goes in and just drops out, or at the same time Fani Willis does her stuff, then they'll say, oh my gosh, it's state and federal charges on the same thing. And so that's the one, I guess, the one tactic that they haven't done. First, they drop state felony charges. Then they file state felony charges. Then they bring out the federal felony charges. And then people are like, we don't give a shit. So then now I think that they're going to try to do a double whammy as like a one last gasp of jumping the shark. I'm starting to get a picture of that. That they think that, oh, well, we'll do both at the same time. And they might even do another, the Bedminster thing, just to, ahead of it, just to like, say, okay, this is ridiculous. Okay, seriously, you need to drop out, Trump. Oh, come on, really? You need to start pleading out on this stuff. And so, I kind of see that's where they're going with this. I don't know if that lands with anyone else, but there you go. Let's see. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your evening. We'll see you guys on the next one. See you soon. All right, thanks everyone. Oh wait, thank you to Texas for Trump with 1,000 gold pills over there on the Foxhole with the message "fuck them." There you go. There you go. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to drop off the scratching now.